How are you doing? This is David W. Williams, also known as Diamond Dave, the founder of the highest paid part-time job in the world, Options Trading Academy. Now, we saw CPI data come out, I want to say last Thursday, and it was in line with expectations. However, it was higher on the year than it was the previous year, and it also was an increase on a month-to-month basis. And what we're going to look at in this particular video today is how CPI data is going to impact your buying power in 2022, what this problem is actually being caused by, and there's some solutions to the problem. So what we're going to do here is I don't want to just talk about the problem, put you into a fear factor, make you seem like it's all your fault. We're going to also talk about some of the limitations of budgeting, but we want to try to give you some real solutions, because what you have to understand is that as this particular inflation rate becomes consistent, you can start to normalize it. And then as a result, you don't do anything to solve the particular problem, which can hurt you a lot long term. And what I want you to understand is that some of the solutions to inflation are going to have a long-term benefit, and some of the issues or the challenges with inflation are going to have a long-term problem that can start to compound or multiply over time. And if you just kind of look at it from a year-to-year standpoint, it can set you up for a lot of issues 5, 10, 15 years down the road. And that's what we want to talk about. So that's what we're going to talk about in this particular video. We're going to try to offer some solutions. But what I want you to understand is that you have to realize is that your some of the solutions that are going to be offered to you are really going to be based around you not being able to deal with the actual rise in inflation. And we're going to talk about that. So let's go and get into it. I don't want to make the monologue be very, very prolonged, but I want to continue to reiterate to you or reinforce to you. This 2022 is going to be serious. And if you aren't taking the time to really deal with your situation financially and to deal with some of the issues that you may be having financially, and you just ignore it, it's not going to get better in 2023. And I know it can be hard to look at, right? I know sometimes you may not want to look at how much money you're not bringing in, right? But if you can ever determine, like, I'm going to just make myself deal with this situation and not blame myself, because a lot of times you can take accountability without trying to make yourself the bad guy in the situation. And there's a lot of that on YouTube to where we just want to blame ourselves. Or I'm just going to point the finger at you because I'm supposed to be so much smarter than you, and you're supposed to be so much dumber than me. And what I want to tell you is that, or we're going to look at this other group of people and look at how stupid they are because they're in this situation. What I want you to understand is that they may not be a solution to your problem. So we can hide behind the YouTube, but that may not be a solution to your problem. And what I'm going to show you in this video, and one of the things I like to show you is I like to get outside of the mainstream narrative of who in this particular country is having financial issues, right? Because we've created a narrative in the mainstream around it just fits this type of person because these type of people are inherently flawed. And as a result, they're going to always have financial issues. And what I'm going to kind of show you in this video is these financial challenges affect people all across the board, right? It's not just one demographic of person. However, we don't really look at that. And as a result, we don't really understand how to address this properly because we may feel like, well, because I'm not in that demographic, it doesn't apply to me. It will apply to you because the CPI number, right, is a number that is across the board, and it impacts different parts of your particular economic situation. And that's something that you really got to examine. So I want you to really take this serious, and I'm going to continue to reinforce to you as we get farther and farther into 2022. So we're getting ready to wrap up the first quarter. The conversations that you're having, the people that you're talking to, the things that you've made important, not only on this social media, but in your real life, they're going to impact the quality of your life. And that's why I've tried to figure out how to use my influence, that little bit of influence that I have, to talk about different things on social media, because I understand how important this type of stuff is. Because if we look at, and I was talking to a guy the other day, if we look at the Soviet Union, because of their leadership, a lot of those people are going to be destroyed economically, right? They're going to be destroyed because of their leadership. And many of them are going to spend the rest of their life trying to figure out how to get out of that hole, right? And we've been taught for years that, well, the people at the top of society will never do anything to destroy the economy because they're going to go down with it. We see now in Russia that can't be correct, because what this guy's doing is going to destroy the Russian economy, right? So why would he do it? And we got to understand is that these things can happen to you. And if you don't have a solution to the problem, you're just going to be going on a ride and you don't know when the ride stops, and you also don't know how to get off, right? And that's something that I want to try to give people solutions to these particular type of problems, so you're not so dependent upon somebody in a leadership position thousands of miles away or 100 miles away, and you feel like, well, if they just make this decision, my whole economic situation is going to change. They may not have incentives that are aligned with yours. And what we're seeing is that the military incentives that Putin may feel like he has may be aligned with the Russian people, but it's definitely not the economic incentives, right? And I showed it on my weekend stock market talk. The ruble has collapsed. Therefore, anything that needs to be brought into Russia, you're going to pay a pretty penny for. Why? Because the ruble has no value. And we can't assume inside the United States that we won't have something similar happen to us like that. But at the same time, the inflation is gradual. And as long as the rate keeps going up gradually, over time, the buying power of your dollars can continue to get eroded. And you shouldn't assume that because you can buy a basket of goods in 2022 based on the amount of money that you're making, right, that you're also going to be able to buy that same basket of goods in 2032. You shouldn't make that assumption, because things get radically changed, and because you don't even understand how this particular dynamic works, because over the past 5 to 10 years, you're dealing with everything except this situation. You're unprepared for the new reality. And I don't want that to happen to you. And that's what really motivates me to do what I do. But let's go ahead and get into the content, because that's pretty much my basic monologue. Let me stop this screen and let me share something out.
Particularly pronounced with some groups of Americans. That includes seniors living on fixed incomes and millennials who had already lost ground during the financial crisis and the Great Recession. Economics correspondent Paul Solomon reports.
Oh, prices has gone way out of control.
At the South End Senior Center in Hartford, Connecticut, rising prices have seniors like 67-year-old Hyacinth Yenny feeling the burn.
You look at your electrical bill, you look at your gas bill, you look now, especially now, food bill. It's ridiculous.
I like hamburger.
Retired utility worker Mark DeMeo.
It's up $1 a pound, so I cut back.
In Kennerdell, Pennsylvania, where backwoods broadband is intermittent,
I live in the country, so that's happened sometimes.
34-year-old Hannah Schall says she can't cut back on formula for her 9-month-old, but the price...
It used to be, $35. Now we're paying $50. So that's $15 in 9 months. That's crazy.
And in Greenville, South Carolina, Schall's fellow millennial, nonprofit development manager Amanda Rice got a rude awakening in December shopping for a used car.
So I didn't realize how expensive it was until I saw the 2021. I was like, hold on, that's around the same price that they're selling the 2015.
A car she needed for her side gig as a rideshare driver.
To tie myself over into that next paycheck because of what's happening in our economy right now.
What's happening is inflation. In economics, more money bidding up fewer goods and services. And right now, COVID inflation. The government printing and doling out more money to prevent a pandemic collapse. COVID clogged supply chains providing fewer goods. Workers afraid to catch COVID staying home, providing fewer services. No surprise that prices have shot up, and no surprise that folks who live paycheck to paycheck, especially the old and young, are the hardest hit.
The cost of living, it's become more difficult to sustain myself.
In Riverside, California, Antonio Najarro said his 2 part-time jobs in retail and for the county were paying less than his pre-pandemic job as a state election worker. So you've been blindsided by the increase in prices?
In hindsight, yes, thinking that I would still be able to get by or manage myself the same way in the past.
In that regard, Najarro, age 30, is a typical millennial.
They're used to stable prices really for their entire working career.
Economist Allie Wolf, herself a millennial.
Really, for the past 15 years, they've had roughly 2% inflation, and that's what they're used to. So costs go up a little bit, but their wages go up a little bit. And so their purchasing power has roughly been stable. And then the pandemic hit, and it really just turned the dynamics upside down.
Case in point, 38-year-old Alexandra Upton. She shares an apartment in Santa Fe, bikes to her job as a restaurant server, yet struggles mightily to make ends meet.
I'm angry. I'm very angry. But the fact of the matter is I'm still in this situation. So I just have to make do, get a second job, pare down, eat one meal a day at the restaurant.
So you eat one meal a day on your night shift at the restaurant, and that's it?
Yeah. And we have had pounds of rice and pasta, and we have some beans, you know.
But you can't afford the fruits and vegetables?
No, absolutely not right now. Nope. And I'm a vegetarian. These aren't abstract issues to me.
Some millennials have resorted to even more desperate measures.
Last month, I was kind of in dire straits. I had to donate plasma twice a week to afford rent.
How much do they pay for plasma?
For newcomers, you get a bonus anywhere between 100 to 150 per donation. But after the first month, it will drop to $50 to $60 per donation.
We're pre-planners, so we stock up pretty well.
Even the most self-sufficient millennial we found was feeling the pinch.
The ammunition is super duper expensive right now. I hunt with a 30-30. The box of shells used to be maybe $20. They're 40 now.
What do you hunt?
Deer, bear, turkey in our backyard.
Wait a second, you don't kill bears in your backyard, do you?
You betcha.
And you eat the bear meat?
Yes. It's not my favorite, but if you skin it correctly, get all the fat off of it, it's not too bad.
What about deer?
It's absolutely delicious. We've actually shot deer out of our living room window.
You mean so you see a deer, you open the window and just shoot the deer?
Yeah.
But it's now more expensive because ammunition has gone up in price.
Welcome to the country.
But wait a second, Shal drives into town to work as a nurse. Has your salary gone up?
Not to match the prices.
Shal's plight is representative of average American workers. Incomes rose nearly 5% last year, but inflation was at 7%.
Wages are going up, but they're not going up as much as we've seen the inflation rate.
And inflation isn't just outrunning worker paychecks. How about retired seniors living on so-called fixed incomes, paychecks that never rise?
They can't just get out and get themselves a big job that can pay them a lot of money.
Some do get small jobs. 71-year-old Inilda Pena works part-time at the Hartford Senior Center to help cover her rising food costs.
I'm diabetic and I have to have certain diet, lettuce and vegetables. Those things are expensive.
But the Social Security payment went up this year.
Yeah, but not that much.
In fact, payments from Social Security, which provides most of the typical senior's income, went up 5.9% in January, the largest cost of living adjustment in 39 years. But again, inflation was 7% last year, and therefore, says the Senior Citizen League's Mary Johnson,
their COLA or their cost of living adjustment isn't keeping up with those other rising costs.
Rising costs like a $21.60 increase in the monthly Medicare Part B premium from $148.50 to about $170, a 15% increase, deducted directly from Social Security checks.
Medicare Part B has increased over the years 3 times faster than the annual Social Security COLA. That's been true for decades.
But decades in which prices for other essentials didn't go up as rapidly as they're increasing now, putting the squeeze on seniors, like 76-year-old retired house painter Robert DeRay. His Social Security, about $1,300 a month, mortgage $835 plus.
My gas bill is $200 a month. My electricity's about $100, $150 a month. My water's been about $100 a month, but I'm hoping that goes down since I fixed the toilet.
But when you subtract his Medicare Part B premium of $170, he's underwater by more than $100 a month, sustained by SNAP benefits, food stamps. He says he can't even afford the $2 lunch at the senior center. Of course, these folks want to know just what we all do. How long will the current inflation last?
Okay, so I wanted to show you that video because what I want people to understand is that what we're seeing is that even though payments are going up. When we talk about cost of living expenses on Social Security, it's not meeting the rate of inflation. Even though people are gainfully employed, right, their income, right, is not meeting the rate of inflation. Because there's a narrative, especially on, social media, and especially put out by a lot of politicians, especially put out by a lot of right-wing political pundits, is that anybody that's having economic issues inside the country is just because they're lazy. And one of the reasons why I like to try to show you these type of shows is because it doesn't look to stereotype people and put them inside a basket. It looks at them from the understanding that America is a cross-section of a bunch of different type of people, right? And it's a cross-section of a bunch of different type of people. And therefore, as a result, we see how all these different types of people are impacted by this situation. And what I want people to understand is that many people that present themselves as experts in this space, it's a reason why those people are not the richest people in the world. There's nothing wrong with budgeting. There's nothing wrong with teaching people to budget. There's nothing wrong with teaching people to plan for their retirement. But if those people really knew how to solve the problem, that group of people that do that as their profession, they will be the richest people in the world. They're not. And so we got to understand is that they may be looking at the problem incorrectly, because if the problem is not a lack of planning or a lack of budgeting, but the problem is really a lack of income. And then you have to understand how the society really is set up to where you're always chasing income as opposed to actually having the income. Then you understand that there's going to be a certain percentage of the people that are going to get left out in the cold as they continue to move this thing down the road. Because what we have in America is we have a very small group of people that got more money than they can ever spend. We got the majority of people in the middle that are trying to figure out how they're going to make it. And then we got another group of people that's at the bottom that don't really have anything. And we like to promote this narrative is that people are struggling financially because they're unintelligent. They're struggling financially because they don't have impulse control over their spending. We create these narratives around, you're struggling financially because you eat out too much. And we don't want to deal with the fact that we're in a system in which the majority of the capital is being kept around a small group of people. The other people don't know how to gain the capital that's available to them. So they put themselves in a position where they can only make money when somebody else allows them to make money. And that money's being controlled by that group of people. And then the problem is that as the costs go up, if that group of people doesn't allow you to make more money, then you just got to try to figure out how to deal with the rising costs. So the woman that's working as a nurse, right? There's nothing wrong with that. That's a job that's needed in our society. However, as cost goes up, her job has to now say, well, you know what? We're going to pay you more money to deal with the cost. They may decide that they're not going to do that. Then what? It's just something you got to deal with. And what we have to understand is that this is why we're really not taught about figuring out how to have some type of autonomy over your income. It's not all about just starting a business, but understanding the actual situation that you're in and how these economic things will impact them, right? And then the problem is that when these economic things impact you, you're really not ready for it. And that's what I want people to understand. This is impacting average people. It's impacting people that have pretty much worked their whole life. And now they're looking to try to, live their golden years. But because the cost of living keeps going up, they're trying to figure out how they're going to survive. And I don't see this getting better because of federal monetary policy, right? I don't see this situation get better. What I think is that we're going to just normalize this inflation. And I'm somebody that sees it because I buy a lot of vegetables. I'm seeing the fact that I used to buy zucchini and squash. I buy a lot of zucchini and squash. Maybe 3 months ago it was 80 cents a pound. I'm paying like $1.25, $1.30 a pound for it. So it's gone up 40, almost 50 cents in a few months. And it can just keep going up. And what we're going to see is that, in my opinion, fresh vegetables are going to keep going up. Fresh fruit is going to keep going up. Meat is going to keep going up, even though I don't eat a lot of meat. But what's going to stay inexpensive is processed food. So a lot of people are going to get pushed to processed food, which is a less healthy food choice, which is going to impact their health long term. And then on top of that, they're not going to have the money to deal with the health impact of eating this processed food. And these are the things that go on when we don't really try to understand what's going on in our economy and how those impact us, and why a lot of the solutions that we're given, to me, are really not a solution. They're really a Band-Aid. And we're going to kind of talk about that. But let's get into the CPI data because I don't want to break the flow of the show. So let me go ahead and share this screen out real quick. Let me go to the window. Let me go here. Okay, so really quick article from Fortune. Wealthy Americans are beating inflation, but the poorest are worse off, and we kind of understand why that's there. If you have more money at the beginning, you can kind of deal with the fact of inflation by doing something that we call an economics of substitution effect. And here we talk about it's easy to make adjustments to your budget if you're higher income. Instead of shopping at Whole Foods, you can shop at Walmart or Aldi or low-price groceries. However, if you're already shopping at Walmart or Dollar General, there's really nowhere else you can go to try to figure out how to deal with the fact that the food prices have gone up, even at these discount retailers, okay? That's going to be an issue for a lot of people. Is as prices continue to go up, there's really nowhere else you can shop because Walmart and Dollar General were really created to serve people, right, that were already dealing with the fact that they make less money than a lot of people that are a lot more affluent, okay? And for many people, the money's just not there, right? The money's not there. And so there's only so much that they can do in their budget because the money's not there. The guy that we talked about, he got $1,300 a month in Social Security. Well, he got $1,300 to work with. He can't budget and make that $1,300 more when the cost of inflation is going up. So the buying power of the goods that he's going after with his dollars is less. And that's something people got to understand. We look at the Consumer Price Index, just got released March 10th, right? 1 month change in CPI for urban consumers. We see 09 of June, we see 09 in October, and we see it 08. So it fluctuates, but we see it keep going up. This is from February 21 to 22, right? We're seeing change in 1 month CPI for all urban consumers, all items less food and energy. We see it keep rising. So from February 21 to February 22, we see it keeps going up, right? We can look at 10% changes for CPI. We can look at each particular item, right? This is a really, really good article that I would tell you to look into because it shows you month to month, but also year to year, the cost of going after these particular goods is a lot more expensive. Now we can look at it from a graph, right? We got all items. We got food at 7.9, 12-month CPI, and then we got energy. So when we go to food, we can drill it down. That's food at home or food away from home. So now here's what I'm talking about. The narrative is that, well, if you just stop eating out, it's less expensive. What we're seeing is that food at home is going higher than food away from home. But the narrative is that if you just stop eating out, it'll solve all your problems. You know, if you don't buy Popeyes, you can invest. But what we're seeing is that eating at home, right, is becoming more expensive and has a higher inflation impact than eating away from home. Okay? Let me back that up. Let me go back to energy. We know that energy commodities have gone up and energy services has gone up. Now, I want you to understand something. This CPI number is really impacting what has happened over the last month. As we go into this new month, and we have to deal with the fact that gas has really, really shot up, and as a result, food is going to shoot up. When we get the next CPI on April 12th, that probably will be even higher than this one because we're dealing with all-time highs, not all-time highs, but we're dealing in really seasonal highs in energy prices. And that's what people got to understand. So the next print's probably going to be even. So fuel, oil, gasoline, all types, right? Then we have all items, less food and energy, commodities, less food and energy, services, less energy services. So I want you to understand. The problem is that the cost of the basket of goods that you're going after with your dollars are more expensive for a lot of different reasons. The issue is that they don't see when this is going to go down. And federal monetary policy doesn't really have a solution to this problem. And that's what I want you to understand. Now, what's going to happen as this number continues to go up and skew up and they don't do anything about it, what they're going to look to do is distract you from the problem. Because what we're seeing is that the Federal Reserve, whose job it is to deal with inflation and also employment, they're saying that this week they're probably going to do a 0.5 raise in the interest rate. At the end of the year, we might have an interest rate of 1%. That's really not going to change anything, in my opinion, right? And so what we're going to see is that to distract people from their economic situation, they're going to just come with a lot of their tried and true proven strategies to keep the masses distracted. So now what are those? It's going to be sports and entertainment, right? We're getting ready to go into the NFL season. We're getting ready to go into the college football season. We got our regular entertainers who are going to distract you. So I want you to look for the fact that you're going to have these entertainers. They're going to put massive campaigns behind these entertainers. And they also going to get to political distractions because we're getting ready to go into midterms. And they're going to push these distractions really, really hard because they need you to focus on that, right? More than they need you to focus on your economic situation, right? And that's what they're going to do. They're going to need you to focus on that. So we're going to see, you know, DeSantis and what he's doing in Florida is going to become the thing, even though the majority of y'all don't live in Florida. So I don't know why you're worried about what a governor of the state of Florida is doing because you don't live there. But he's going to become the political celebrity. Then they're going to push the sports because the sports has always worked. NFL did great numbers last year, even though everybody on both sides of the political spectrum said they're going to stop watching football. NFL did great numbers last year. And then we're going to get more over-the-top content from the entertainers. And then we also got the entertainers on social media who have their own little entertainment lane, and they're going to also get promoted. And this is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. Why? Because we need to distract you, right, from the fact that your economic situation is worse. We don't want you focusing on that. We need you focusing on the rest of this stuff. Okay? Let's go into that. Now, what are supposed to be some of the solutions to this particular problem? So people say, David, we pretty much examined the problem. Let's go into the solution. So we say, what are some of the solutions, right? First solution people are going to give to you is going to be budgeting. Okay? And budgeting can work. I'm not against you having a budget. I'm not against you tracking your expenses. I think you as a person should track how much money you bring into your household and how much money goes out your household. Because I think then once you do that, you can really start to realize I may not bring in enough money. The challenge I have with people that promote budgeting is they have to promote it from the assumption that there's leakage in your life, right? So if I'm going to promote budgeting, I got to promote it from the assumption that there's leakage in your life. What do I mean by that? What I mean is that I have to promote it that when you know what you're eating out a lot. We already talked about the fact that we see now through CPI data that eating at home there's more of an impact from an inflation standpoint, eating at home than it is eating out. But I got to promote the narrative that you have less money because you eat out all the time. Or you have too much entertainment. So you're spending too much money on streaming sites, things of that nature. Or you're spending too much money going to concerts and shows, or you're spending too much money on clothes, yada, yada, yada. Well, in reality, you may just not make enough money because budgeting comes from the perspective that, well, I can find something in your budget that shows that there's leakage. But in reality, the thing is you may just not be bringing in enough money to deal with the expense of living. And we don't want to deal with that because then the person that all they have to sell you is budgeting, they don't have a role for themselves anymore. Because all I'm going to do is put you on a budget. If we find out that the fact that you don't bring in enough money on the front end, there's really no role for me in your life because you can't budget zero. Or if the cost of you surviving are going to be $2,000 a month and you only bring in $1,500, well, there's a gap of $500. There's a shortage of $500. Well, once we figure that out, when there's no need for me anymore, because why? You got to go figure out how to make an excess of that $500 to not create a new budget. And that's why I'm not a fan of just telling people, well, you need to plan or you need to budget. Do you need to know how money moves in and out of your life? Yes. But what a lot of people are going to find out is their biggest problem is they don't bring in enough money. And this is what I've been telling people on this platform for a very long time, is we may have to really examine the fact that you and your group don't bring in enough to survive the way you want to survive in this environment. And you have not made it a priority until it becomes an emergency. And what I want people to understand is that when it's not an emergency, we may want to consider making it a priority because it can be easier to get the money when everybody's not struggling to make it. When we're on a bull run like we was on the past really 10 to 15 years, that may be the easiest time for us to get money, create provisions, so that we go into lean times like this, right? We sitting on something and now we got something to work with. But many times, we don't try to figure out that we need money until we hit lean times. You remember I forgot the story about, it might have been Joseph, and I'm not trying to have church with y'all. It might have been Joseph. We gave a prophecy that you're going to get 7 good years and 7 bad years, right? We may need to start looking at things like that. We might be on a run that, well, okay, we're making a lot of money right now. While we making a lot of money, how can we create provisions to when we're not making money, right? So when we have a downturn of what we got going on, we got something to work with. But I don't come from the standpoint is that all you need to do is create a budget and then that'll solve all your problems, because your real problem may be you're just not bringing in enough money. So am I a fan of budgeting? Yes. I am a fan of budgeting. One of the things that my SCORE mentor told me is that most businesses fails because a person, one, don't know how to do the business. Two, they don't understand how to do bookkeeping. So she really hammered me down on making sure I'm doing bookkeeping, yada, 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 because she says a lot of businesses fail because the people don't even know how much money is coming in and out of their business. So even though they're making money, they may be losing money somewhere, but they're not aware of it, right? Because of the amount of money that they don't know that's coming in because they're not doing bookkeeping. So she really got on top of me to make sure I was doing my bookkeeping. So that's the first thing. We want to talk about budgeting. Next thing, you want to talk about investing in assets that appreciate over time. Okay. What can you invest in that is going to appreciate over time? And that's something that is not really talked about. Okay. How can we take our money that we're earning and put it in something that is going to invest over time that is going to outpace the rate of inflation? But we don't even know what the rate of inflation is. You understand me? And so therefore, we don't know what the rate of inflation is. We're not even aware of where we need to try to put our money to outpace the rate of inflation over time. And then therefore, we're not prepared for when these type of scenarios happen. And I'm not talking about a get rich quick scenario or get rich overnight. Is that I'm making a certain amount of money per year because of the rate of inflation. I do need to have a savings. I'm a big fan of you having an emergency savings, right? But then once I get past that, where do I need to put my money that can outpace the rate of inflation? Because by me having my money sitting in one place, I'm losing buying power of that money because of the rate of inflation. So what assets can I invest in that will appreciate over time, that over time will outpace the rate of inflation? Because if my money is just standing still, I'm losing buying power of my particular money. Because if I put $1,000 in the bank last year, this year, that $1,000 buys less than what it bought last year. Next year, that $1,000 will buy less than what it bought the first year I put it in. So is the money compounding at a rate that's greater than the rate of inflation? Well, the question is, do we know what the year-to-year rate of inflation is and understand that that rate of inflation is probably conservative? It's probably not the real rate of inflation. And these are the things that we got to ask ourselves. Okay, so what assets are we invested in that are going to appreciate over time? And like I said, I'm not talking about the get rich quick stuff. I'm not a financial advisor, but I'm not talking about how I'm going to get rich overnight, how I'm going to get rich in 90 days. What I'm trying to get us an understanding is that one of the things that you saw real estate investors do, and a lot of, to me, it looked like it was a lot of syndication deals, is when they realize that, you know what, the Federal Reserve is going to give us 0% cost of capital. As a result, it's going to make house financing very, very inexpensive. We're in a trend now to where millennials are trying to buy homes. It's going to put demand on the housing market. We can take our syndicated capital. We can sink it into real estate properties. Those properties are going to appreciate because we got a limited amount of properties in the inventory, but we got demand on those properties. And we're getting 100% returns on real estate in a 2 to 3 year period. We're getting 50% returns on real estate in a 2 to 3 year period. And historically, it could take us a lot longer to get those kind of returns on real estate because we understand the macroeconomic situation that's going to drive the microeconomic situation in this particular real estate market. And then we can take our capital and have that capital appreciate and exceed the rate of inflation in a relatively short amount of time. And then we can take that capital out of those houses and put it in another place. But we've essentially 10x our capital in comparison to the rate of inflation. And now we can move it into another area. The reason why they can do that is because they understand how to do things like what? Invest in assets that appreciate over time. And they understand how to take advantage of these situations in the markets. Right? That's something that I want to really try to get people to understand, because these opportunities do exist inside the United States, but it has to be something that you're preparing yourself for. And it has to be something that you believe is important. And it has to be something also that you believe that you have an ability to be successful at. But it's not an overnight scenario. So the people that was able to put their money inside these particular, these real estate investors that have been able to take advantage of this real estate boom that we've had over the past 2 years, we don't know. They may have been trying to stack their capital over the past 10 years. We don't know that. But what we do know is that when the time came, they had the capital and had the ability to go ahead and do that. So that's something I want people to understand. Now, the next thing is that how can you out earn inflation? That's the most important thing. And so one of the reasons why we started, and I'm a kind of bid, right, what I do is the highest paid part-time job in the world, is because we understand is that, one, many people don't know how to out earn the rate of inflation. One of the things I like about being an options trader is that I have a lot of leverage in the market. So I believe that if I put $100 in the market in a shorter amount of time than I could if I put my money in a bank, a 401k, a mutual fund, a money market fund, I could generate a return on that capital. And then I could take that capital and put it somewhere else and continue to get that return over and over and over again. Is there a risk? Yes. There's always going to be a risk in trying to get a return on your capital, right? But the risk, if you don't try to get a return on your capital, is that inflation is going to eat up your capital. So you just got to figure out what risk is acceptable to you based on the amount of return that you're going to get. But one of the things is I realize that most people don't know how to out earn inflation. And so if they just sit on their job and they just keep things the status quo, inflation will continue to eat up their earning power. And nobody has a solution to them except telling them, well, you just need to start a budget. The reason why I want you to get a budget, because I want you to examine the fact that you're probably not bringing in enough money in comparison to the rate of inflation. It got nothing to do with you eating out, buying shoes. Most people don't do that type of stuff. That's internet stuff. And that's a narrative that we've created around our folks, because you know what? For this narrative to work, we have to be the most irresponsible people in the world. Everybody's irresponsible, not just our people. But most people have never examined and said, you know what? Maybe I don't make enough money to outplace inflation. Because is your job going to give you an 8% raise this year? If they're not going to give you an 8% raise this year, the question is, how are you going to deal with the fact that inflation is 7%? So we try to come up with a solution to this particular problem because we understand that if you not got to go get a second job to make money, that's more time you taking out of your life to go make the money. And then you may be making the money, but you're giving away the most valuable thing, which is your time. And so that's what I want people to really understand. You can defeat some of these things, but you have to learn how to educate yourself and upskill yourself and really get really laced around how these markets actually function and make it a priority in your life to be able to deal with these changing economic situations. Because like I said before, it doesn't matter how much money you make, is the amount of money you're making next year going to outpace the rate of inflation this year? Because if not, in reality, you're losing buying power of your dollar just by working that job. So you got to assume, and I know everybody on the internet makes six figures. We got to assume that you're making so much money that the inflation rate doesn't impact your lifestyle. But it is eroding. It's eroding your savings. It's eroding your 401k. It's eroding all these things if they're not outpacing the rate of inflation, right? That's what I want people to understand. So we got 7% inflation. Does your income move up by 7% each year? That's the question. Does it do that? And if it doesn't do that, then what are you going to do about it, right? Your savings take a hit because of inflation. So as a result, you're going to have to save more. Well, how do you save more if you don't bring in enough money? And that's why I'm not a fan of, well, you just, you need to plan this situation out. Do you need to plan it? Yes. But the question is, if the input isn't there, what are you planning? If the input isn't there, what are you planning? So we look at BLS data and we look at how much the average person makes in America. Are the inputs there where they can deflate inflation by planning? And if the inputs aren't there, then isn't that the real leverage, not the actual planning? And this is why I said that's why that contingent of people are not the richest people in the world, because they really don't have a solution that really, to me, impacts people at that level. Does it provide value? Yes. But like I said before, is if we look at how much money somebody brings in and the input that they're bringing in will not deflate the rate of inflation. If what they're going to make next year will not defeat the rate of inflation based on the input, how is the planning going to be a solution to that? So they can micromanage and create a very strict budget. But just like with any job, with any business, if a business knows that we need to grow by a certain percentage every year to defeat the rate of inflation, they know that they got to drive more sales or they got to cut a cost somewhere to defeat that rate of inflation. Well, as a business, you can't cut costs down to where the fact that you can't function as a business anymore. So then what do you got to start looking at doing? Driving more sales. You either got to raise your price or you got to drive more sales, because you got to deal with the fact that there's a rate of inflation that you have to deal with. And that's what I want people to understand, right? So whether you deal with something that I have to offer you, whether you deal with something that Erica Williams got to offer you, whether you deal with something that what they got to offer at By the Hood, whether you go reach out to Chastity Sandage and she got her own consultant, and you try to figure out what can I do to put myself in a position where I can drive more revenue and more income into my situation, you need to do something, because I'm not just concerned for you at this age. I'm concerned for you down the road, because all of us going to want to retire one day. We're going to want to start working, at least have to work. You may want to do something just because it's fun, but all of us are eventually going to be in a position to where, you know what, we're going to want to slow down and live life. And if you believe that, you know what, I put all my time into this particular situation and now I'm going to get a payout, and then you look at your payout, it is not higher than the rate of inflation, and the rate of inflation is eating up your payout, what assets do you have that are going to defeat the rate of inflation or help offset that cost? Because for a lot of seniors, they living off one payout. So once that payout starts getting hammered by inflation, they don't have anything else they can try to do except cut costs. And you got seniors that are trying to decide, well, should I get my medicine or should I pay my rent? You can't come in with no budget for those people. There's no budget for them. They got to decide, should I cut my medicine or should I pay my rent? I don't want to see you in that situation. And you don't have to be in that situation. It's not inevitable. We need to start thinking now about what we can do to solve these problems. And it's not just an individual solution. It may be that we got to work as a group to try to solve the problem. And I'm not saying everybody. I'm saying you may need to get with a group of people and try to figure out how we're going to solve this problem in our family so we don't end up like this. But I don't want you to be in a scenario, because what the Federal Reserve, to me, is doing is creating monetary policy that is very irresponsible to the masses of American people. They're trying to protect the markets. They don't care about what happens to the average American. That's what they're doing. So we have to adjust and respond to that, because that may be how they proceed as we go into the future. The same way with Putin, how he's destroyed the life for the average Russian, because what he's done is destroyed their currency. It's destroyed their exports. It's going to continue to put pressure on their economy. And he don't care, because I don't think his wealth is in rubles. So he doesn't care what happens to those people. And you got to start realizing that leadership may take that turn, and you're still going to have to try to figure out how to survive in a particular society that you live in. So I'm going to read the comments. If we got any questions, let me know, and then we're going to get up on out of here, because we're at the 42-minute mark. Let me get this out of here. So Melinda, Suzanne, I appreciate the $5. Thank you very much for the super chat. Yeah, definitely. And but see, the problem is that the $15 minimum wage doesn't solve people's problems, because if the cost of living keeps going up, the $15 doesn't change anything. So they'll talk to you like, okay, well, we're going to do you a favor. We're going to get you a higher minimum wage, without understanding is first that some jobs won't hire you because of the higher minimum wage. I forgot what particular business says they're going to raise their minimum wage up. And I said, well, all they're going to do is cut hours. That's how they're going to make sure that minimum wage works out for people. They're going to cut people's hours. So even though you make more money, they cut your hours. Like, let me explain something to a lot of people. The job is not necessarily on your side. They're running a business. One of the reasons why I try to get people interested in the financial markets and for them to understand is that the goal of the CEO is to increase shareholder value. It's not about him worrying about the employees. His job is to worry about employees only in regards to how it impacts shareholder value. So when you work for a corporation or you work for a person, it's not their job to worry about your economic situation. It's their job to figure out how to increase the value of the owners of that particular company, which are going to be the shareholders, the bondholders, and the people that own the senior debt. That's the job. And I think a lot of people struggle with that. So your $15 minimum wage is not going to solve a lot of people's problems, because of the rate of inflation and of the fact that it doesn't mean that you're going to get $15 an hour and you're going to get 40 hours a week. You may get $15 an hour and get 20 hours a week. So you're right where you started. Right? Appreciate the comment. So the more money you have to invest, yeah, definitely. It is a matter of scale. And that's the thing. It's a big matter of scale, you know, and that's the thing. Appreciate it, Thomas. Yeah, definitely. I'd rather have the money and not need it than need it, and I can't figure out how to come up with it. Yeah, that could be an issue. So eating away from home for more affordable for some people. Yeah. And I'm not against people eating out. I mean, it's whatever works for you. I just never bought into the narrative that people are struggling with situations because they're eating Popeye's chicken or whatever. Like, I don't eat out, but I used to eat out a lot. And it's all in what you want to do, because you may be eating out somewhere but saving money somewhere else. I'm just not going to blanket, where the problem is that you're eating out. Yeah, but video views, all those foods are going up, right? So all food items are going up, right? All food items are going up, not just vegetables. Like, my grocery bill has gone up across the board, and I don't eat processed foods. I eat a lot of fresh food sources, and I eat a lot of beans, and everything's gone up across the board. It's just because we're dealing with inflation. There's really no way to kind of like duck it. You just got to deal with the fact that it just costs more money. So as a result, I got to figure out how to make more money. Right? Yeah, I feel with you. But Mr. Hall, we got to ask ourselves that, how do you plan if you don't have it? So we're telling people that don't have something that they should plan. They don't have it. If a person, I live in a city that got 20% poverty rate. So the 20% of the people in poverty, they don't have it. So what are they going to plan? And I think we just really need to deal with that reality. I live in a city that got a 20% poverty rate, and to be considered poor or under that, you're really not bringing in a lot of money. I mean, it's not a lot. So they don't have it. They don't have it from the gate. And I don't think we want to deal, like, we kind of overlook that there's a lot of people that just don't have it. So there's not a lot of planning, because when you don't have it, to me, you're so busy trying to figure out how you're just going to make it. You don't really have a lot of time to do a lot of forecasting and modeling. But I appreciate the comment. Yeah, I feel you. Yeah, it used to be a farmer's market in Tampa I used to go to. I need to try to figure out where that's at in this particular area. Yeah, that's what I was saying, GC. Like, imagine me being a Russian and I was sitting on millions of dollars of rubles. And really, this has been happening over the past year. Because of this situation, I got nothing now. Right? Or imagine, like, not even, like, let's say I had a portfolio and, 20% of my portfolio was rubles. That's gone now. And it's very unlikely that comes back anytime. That's crazy. And, the guy don't even really care. He's like, whatever. Because I don't think his wealth was in rubles. We may look up and find out that Putin's wealth was in gold. So he don't care what happened to the ruble, because his wealth's not in ruble. Or his wealth may be in Bitcoin. We never know. So he don't care what happens to the ruble, because his wealth's not in rubles. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'm not sure it's sustainable either, especially not people doing it by themselves. If we just can get people to realize that you can't do it by yourself out here, I think the biggest lie that we bought into is that everybody can just be this independent person. And if you're, it's funny how people will compromise on their job, and they compromise dealing with the government. When it comes to interpersonal relationships, they don't want to make any kind of compromises. I think that spirit is one of the worst spirits that people have gotten us to buy into, right? I mean, that they've so poisoned the water with that spirit. And I think a lot of people are going to find out as they get older, man, is that I bought into the wrong plan. That I'm just going to work this job and I'm just going to live off my retirement. I think it's going to be difficult as people get older, because I think the cost of living is just going to keep going up. Yeah, I agree with that, but everybody don't see it the same way. So let me go down here before we get out of here. Yeah, I believe that. Yeah, if you can find 5 or 6 people, you can really do it. I like that. I knew a guy in South Georgia. he had a farm, and he would let you buy like that cow. So when they slaughtered it, you could get it. That's the move. You know what I'm saying? Especially people that like to eat a lot of meat. Do I think China will be the next pillar of economics? I think they already are. They owe $1 trillion of U.S. debt. I think they already are economic pillar. Somebody owes $1 trillion of your debt. They already are economic pillar because they got $1 trillion of your debt. Appreciate it, Thomas. Yeah, you running with it because you see it. And I'm glad, I'm happy that you're running with it. Because I can tell by your comments, you're seeing how to look at these things really critically and understanding how to take advantage of it by being able to look at it critically. And that's a challenge for a lot of people. But I knew that once I was able to teach it to certain people, they would jump right on it and they just run with it. Right. And so that's why I really appreciate the fact that you've been able to take it and run with it. And, other people, it may take them more time, like it takes me sometimes more time to see other things. But I appreciate you was able to take it because I knew this is something that a lot of people aren't taught. And once you understand how to look at that business a certain way, you realize, okay, it's very likely this is the scenario by looking at it and this is where it's going to go. And then here's how I can monetize it. Because me and you had a phone conversation and I told you, like, my goal is to bring people out that's going to just terrorize the markets because they know how to play it. And it's not just options, whatever market, but they know how to terrorize it. Like I talked about with the real estate investors, they was able to look at the market, realize we got a 0% cost of capital. We got a demographic shift where more people are going to start buying homes because we got more millennials moving into the home buying space. That 0% cost of capital, we got a certain amount of homes sitting on inventory. That's going to drive up demand with limited supply. That's now a good place for us to put our capital so that capital can appreciate. And we're sitting in homes that people wouldn't even want to buy, but the whole overall market has gone up. And I show that when you look at the Jacksonville market, in those areas that most people wouldn't even want to live at, those homes have gone up a lot over the past few years. And it's just because investors have bought all those homes up. They've done massive buying all over the country. But I appreciate the comment. So DT crypto, the slippery slope as inflation's rise, disposable incomes becomes tight, business ideas targeting people directly will be hurt. Okay, I feel you. Yeah, it does. Do they got to be unionized to get in there, Rosario? Because if they don't be unionized, man, put a post up on your social media, let people know it's jobs out there. Do you got to be unionized to get in there? Yeah, exactly. How do you budget zero or damn near zero? It can just be difficult. Yeah. And thing about it is, Erica, I eat a lot of beans and rice as a choice. Right. I'm a big beans and rice eater as a choice. And I see it going up. And I don't eat it because I got to. I eat it because I like it. Right. Where I'm from, we eat a lot of rice and a lot of beans. And I'm seeing that going up. And I'm choosing to eat that. So I can imagine the people that were choosing to eat other food items because I eat a lot of beans and rice. I choose to eat that type of food and it's going up. It's getting crazy out here. Yeah, I hope he did. He's an idiot because the ruble's over with. You know what I'm saying? So like I said, he can't have his wealth in rubles. But see, this is what I was talking to this guy where this is why leadership is important because he's destroyed the retirement of millions of Russians by what he's done. Now, he may feel like from a military standpoint, I had to make this move. But what are people going to retire off of now? Because you're paying them in rubles through a pension. How do they spend the ruble in the market? And like I said, anything that they need that has to come outside of Russia, it's going to be impossible for them to buy it because of the exchange rate. You know, so it's going to be rough on people. Yeah, I mean, I want to see what assets they're really losing because I don't really consider a yacht an asset. So are they being, even the soccer team, I think the one guy lost, that was an asset, I believe. But like what assets are they really losing? And are they being locked out of having the ability to actually do business outside of Russia? Right. And that's the issue. And do they have control over that guy? He might have control over them. We seem to have this I'm not talking about you, Mr. Alcindor. In America, billionaires run the country. In other parts of the world, billionaires don't necessarily run the country. The people that run the country run the country. But in America, billionaires run this. You go to parts of the world, billionaires may not run it. The people that run it, they run it, and they tell billionaires how to play gonna work. You know, and if you could go along with it, or you can just end up a ghost. Two acres of land. I feel you. Yeah. So that's an asset. That football club. But I don't think, are those yachts assets or are they liabilities? You know, they locking up these people yachts. I mean, they probably mad, but I don't think that's an asset. It's probably a liability. Yeah, big time beans and rice. I like lentils too. Yeah, I believe that too. Unfortunately, I believe that. Yeah, that's 100%. You know, it's just messed up what he's doing to them people. You know, they closed the stock market down. I mean, it's just ridiculous. You know, these companies that had ETFs, they losing all their value. Like I really think when it's over, I think Russia turns into North Korea. I just really think that's what's going to happen. I think they turn into North Korea. And we see how bad things are for North Koreans. Now, the leadership group, they doing good. They living their life. But the average North Korean, it's a struggle. You know, it's a struggle. And I just think that's when this is all over, what I think Russia turns into North Korea. I feel you. James Ramsey got a lot of really successful businesses, telling people to budget and things of that nature. And he's right in one aspect, but what he doesn't talk about, and really that's because of his position, is to tell people that, you know what, maybe you don't make enough money. You know, because I don't think that's really his assignment. But, you know, he got a successful business in doing what he does. He's a very successful businessman. Yeah. I seen that. So I'm just saying there's a yacht, just like a car. Is a car an asset or a liability? Now, if he utilizes the yacht to make money, it could be an asset. But if he just buys it and he just enjoys it, it's probably a liability from an accounting standpoint, just like a car. But I mean, I wouldn't want to get my yacht taken either. I seen the yacht. The yacht was crazy. You know what I'm saying? It's crazy. But is it an asset or a liability? So, you know, they can steal their liabilities. But if a guy can afford a $500 million yacht, he can afford to lose it. He ain't hurting for it, you know. But like I said before, I don't think those guys may not run Russia. You know, in America, billionaires got a lot of influence. In other parts of the world, we saw what China did to Jack Ma. Billionaires don't have no influence. They do what the people tell them what to do, right? But in America, we've allowed billionaires to control the society. In other parts of the world, they just, you know, they got to play a position like everybody else. You just allowed to make a lot of money, but they let you know, we allowing you to do this. And if you play a game with us, we'll get you out of here, right? And we'll go on to the next person. You know what I'm saying? But what I think, unfortunately, happens to Russia is what happened, and some of y'all not going to remember this because y'all was too young. When the Soviet Union fell, late 80s, early 90s, it just turned into just mob. It turned into gangland. Because what happened is the mob took over because nobody couldn't get paid. So the only people that knew how to make money was organized crime. And then they took over, and then now they controlled everything because why? Nobody else knew how to make money. Because if the whole economy in Russia collapses, who pays the police departments? Who pays the fire departments? Who pays all the civil service workers? Because what you working for? Money that don't have any value? So then what you just get gangland. And I think that's what's unfortunate. I think Russia was trying to rebuild out of that after the late 80s, early 90s. And I think they may end right back in that same scenario. So then now happens is the government becomes the biggest gang. That's the only way they're going to keep power. And we see that in North Korea. You know, the government is running around. They the biggest gang. Now, we got some aspects of that inside the United States, even though people don't want to admit it. But it's real. So I think it's really unfortunate for Russians is that they kind of going backwards in time as opposed to going forward. But, you know, who you pick as your leader is really, really important. You know, you got to really be careful about that because they can take a turn and, you know, we could get distracted or get diverted for the next 20, 30 years. All right. So that's pretty much going to be it, everybody. I appreciate everybody coming through. So if you got any questions about the highest paid part-time job, reach out to me. But I really want to encourage you, no matter what you get involved in something. right? Get involved in something, because if you don't get involved in anything, I really think it's going to be detrimental to you. And I've been telling people this since last year. And I remember I was working out at the gym, and I was talking to this guy from Philly, and I was telling him, man, I'm finna start working. Why? Because I said, I think when this little pandemic thing is over, I said, I think a lot of people are going to realize how much money they don't have, right? They was propping this thing up, and people was doing this and doing that in the third. Cool, y'all do your thing. Y'all go get y'all money. But I said, I think when this thing is over, people going to start realizing how much money they really don't have. So I said, I ain't going to take my foot off the gas. I'm just hustling. I'm at it. I got to get it. Because I think when people look up, they're going to realize how much money they don't have. And some people, the pressure of that going to collapse them, unfortunately. And I feel bad for them. The pressure of knowing I just don't have it, it's going to collapse them. And it's going to impact their family. It's going to impact their children. They just going to collapse under the pressure. And I don't want that to happen to y'all. But we got to get focused and get about these situations and start making it important. You ain't got to be a slave to it. But getting distracted with sports, even though I love sports, getting distracted with celebrities, even though I love music, getting distracted with politicians, right? Even though I'm not a fan of politicians, I don't think that's going to be a solution to your problem, right? And so I want to really encourage you to figure out what the solution to your economic situation is going to be, and understand you may have to accept the fact that you just don't bring in enough money. And it don't make you a bad person. It don't mean that you're null and void. It don't mean you're a sucker. You just got to try to figure out how to bring in some more money, and then do that, and then build off of that, and then get you a clique of people, and y'all do what y'all got to do. So I appreciate everybody coming through. It's David W. Williams, also known as Diamond Dave. Y'all be safe out there. Enjoy your weekend. Talk to you later.